So, welcome to this latest Race Director webinar um, with us at Run Events and England Athletics. Um, Various bits to go through, which we'll work our way through during the next hour. And there will be an opportunity at the end as well, as we like to do with this, for you guys to ask us any questions. And we'll do our very best to answer it for you. We can't guarantee it's always the answer that you want, but we'll certainly try and answer that for you. So we'll move straight on with the plan. So we thought it might be quite nice, as we last had the webinar in November time, so we were getting towards the end of the year, just to have a look at a few of the headlines from last year and to have a look at a little bit of data that we've got for this year based on the events that have already sent in their licenses to us. So we've called this the backdrop with some headlines. So we had a similar number of events in 2025 to 2024, depending on what measurement you use for it, whether you measure events as a single event that's made up of half marathon, 10K, 5K and count that as one, or whether you count that as three, depends on what figure you arrive at with the total number of events, but it's around about 3,000. And from that, the good news is that in 2025, there were 1.41 million runners that took part in licensed events during, and that's 1st of January through to the December the 31st. So it includes all the Santa runs and that kind of stuff as well, which is a significant move forward from where we were a couple of years ago when we were closer to the 1 million, 1.1 million, and about 200K ahead of the previous year as well. So that's a really positive move forward for all of us on the call that are race directing, and obviously the sport as a whole as well. So just looking underneath those numbers, what did that look like in terms of clubs and those who are affiliated and unaffiliated? And bearing in mind, this does take into account the very big city events as well as the local events. So it's a real cross section. So 69% of all of the runners that took part, that 1.41 million, were not affiliated. So that's the overall figure there. So quite an interesting one there. And it does show that we do need all of these different types of runners to take part, as well as the affiliated runners. So, hugely important that we cater for both when we're thinking of how we approach our races and events. If we split it out, it doesn't make a lot of difference, but if we look at just male runners, it's actually 68% were not affiliated, compared to 70.5% of female runners. So slightly more female runners were not affiliated than the male runners. That's not a great surprise when we look at the membership that we have across the clubs, across the country, and with also the data where we know where females are running and the types of clubs and groups they're part of. I should stress when we're talking affiliated, that doesn't include run together groups, because they're not affiliated. They are part of the England Athletics family, but they're not affiliated entities. We are looking at the metrics and data that we've got to see if we can report that figure separately, because we know, particularly on the female side of the sport, there's a lot of female runners that are in run together groups. There is crossover as well between run together groups and clubs where some people are in both as well. So we need to have a look carefully at that data and those metrics. To give you the male female split across that 1.41 million, 56.5% were male, obviously leaving the balance, 43.5% being female. That's really good to see the number of female runners that are taking part. We are, and it's not a subject we're covering on this webinar, but it would be for a future one. We are doing some work with an advocacy group and women's running group called She Races. And She Races are looking at the barriers and the things that we as race directors need to think about when we're trying to make sure that the sport is equal and that they are open to women. So we will be looking at that, as I say, in a bit more detail at a future webinar, once we've done some more work with She Races. But as you can see from those figures, the sport is looking really buoyant. I thought it was worth looking because we all know cost of living has gone up dramatically, hasn't it, in the last couple of years or so, as has the cost of everything, I think, really, is to look at the entry fees. And we've just taken two distances because we didn't want to go too far with all of the data points here. At the average prices of races based on what we're seeing in license applications for 2026. So half marathon, and we know there's a disparity between major and city events and the more local events. So we've broken both of these sections into three different types. So major and city events in the half marathon, they are cost between 45, and it's just off the edge of my screen there. I think if I remember rightly, 65 or 70 was the top figure there. High profile races with closed roads, large participation numbers, huge infrastructure costs, regional led club races, local events, somewhere between 25 and £40. So quite a difference there. Then looking at 10Ks, again, no great surprise to see that the major city and landmark events are the highest priced. Again, extensive road closures, lots of infrastructure, 45 to 50. So 10K doesn't necessarily look great value compared to half marathon when you look at that large event space. Regional and standard races, somewhere between 22 and 35. If we were to split the geography, we'd probably see a slight difference as well. And then the local club and community races, which are around 63% of all of the events that we license, are the most affordable, often between 15 and £25. So quite a difference, really, when you look at the major events, 45 to £50, going down to that £15 at a local level. But we thought that was quite useful for you to see. There's obviously a big mix of race directors on the call from different backgrounds. Kind of useful to know how you benchmark. And I know you'll do that within your own local areas, but we can reflect the national picture for you. So changing tack slightly there. We all know on this call, and we've all heard from multiple occasions, the age group changes that are coming up at the end of the month, starting 1st of April 2026. And one of the questions that we've had come up on a number of occasions, in fact, probably the main question we've had for road races, multi-terrain providers, and indeed some of the other off-track disciplines, is what are the maximum distances changing? Do they need to do anything different with that? And how's it affected? So what I've done is taken the information that we do have on the England Athletics website, which has got this grid on there for what is termed endurance events effectively, and plotted the age groups as they'll be with the even age groups from the 1st of April, and the age therefore on the day, which is, as you all know from road racing, the age on the day is what distance they can actually run. Doesn't matter if their birthday's the next day, they're not that age yet. And we've put in there the distances that are recommended as well as the maximum distances. So the key one is that red section, which I've highlighted in there for you. So you can see essentially the message is no change. in terms of the distances that runners are allowed to run based on the age on the day. So you can see that 5K, as long as they're 11 years or more on the day, they can still run 5K. There is a recommendation that from certain quarters that less might be good, but that is where the rule is. You can see then as it builds through for 12, 13-year-olds, that goes up to 6K, 14-year-olds up to 8K, 15-year-olds can actually do up to 12K. So those of you, we traditionally think 15, 10K, which is correct. That's absolutely right. But if your race is just over 10K, you will be able to take it up to 12K. So if you've got perhaps a multi-terrain race that's a long 10K, you will be able to include those. As I say, that was the rule before, but we've highlighted it much more clearly here. 16, 17-year-olds in there, so half marathon, still 17. That's kind of the key point to take from there. Again, if you've got a slightly long half marathon, still okay, because just to remind you, 21K is half marathon. You can go up to 25K there, and obviously you need to be 18 to do a marathon. And then obviously unlimited distances beyond that point there. So I thought this was quite useful for you all. We can when we send out the notes afterwards, what we'll do is we'll send you the link to this page, the page that this is featured on the England Athletics website. What you'll also find on there is there's a lot of other useful guides. And those of you who are involved in other disciplines in the sport, perhaps track and field, perhaps cross country, perhaps you're more active in other areas in your club, all the guides, all the literature is there, but we'll give you this specific page reference as well. So hopefully that's useful for everyone there. Okay, so again, a bit of a change. System changes we're looking at now. So a lot of you are familiar with the Sport 80 run event system, so englandathletics.sport80.com, where you go to license your events. And we will be very shortly, within the next few weeks, changing the number of options that are available on the licensing system. It's not a reduction in how many races or types of races you can do. It's just a simplification of the buttons. So at the moment, when you go to license my event on the system, you're presented with around about a dozen different options, and then you need to work out which one am I going to press. We did that in the first place because that's what the system needed. We've been able to massively simplify it. So there are only 4 options now, of which in your organization, you're only going to be able to choose from 2 of them because either you're a club or you're an event promoter. And obviously clubs are affiliated clubs, leagues, associations, but your organization profile is set on the system. So you're basically choosing, am I having a license with or without online entries? So for the vast majority of you, you'll just be choosing either club license or event promoter license. Then if you want to use the run event system for online entries, it's the second of the 2 options. So nice and simple. What will also happen is there'll be a bit of a refresh in the way it looks. That will come, it may come exactly the right time, at the same time, sorry. We're not sure on the exact phasing of it. You may see it in this format first and not see, I'll just go back, you might not see it in that. It may go straight to that format, which is a refreshed feel, which works much better on mobile and tablet devices. It's just the synchronization of the changes that we're not 100% sure on, because this is a platform-wide change with lots of other areas included. So provided all those other areas test correctly, we'll be able to change this one at the same time. But it's no different. There's still only before the 4 options. It's just you'll have club or event promoter there, and they're embedded on the screen rather than on a pop-up, but that means it works much better on your devices. Um, and much clearer messaging at the top, you can see there as well, which isn't so clear on the current generation, which talks about that Stripe account and the use of the online entry system. So look out for that. I say we're only a couple or so weeks away from that. Be a positive move. What will also come in at the same time, and I've just highlighted one on here. I didn't want to bore you with 10 different screenshots from the system showing you these things. You'll notice this one's quite subtle, actually. That imagine England Athletics on the screen is the name of your club or organisation, and you've logged on to there and you're looking where on earth do I license my event? This pop-up will know that one of the principal reasons you're going on there is to license your next event. So that tooltip will appear. You can close it if you don't need it, um, pointing to the exact place on the menu that you need to go to find that feature. And what you'll find is as you're using the system, and we put these new changes live, as I say, in the next couple of weeks, there will be various tooltips. Some of them will pop up in a little box like that. Other ones appear as a coloured stripe across a section. So, for example, when you go into races, there'll be a coloured stripe across the top reminding you that when you're licensing and you've got, say, a 10K, a 5K, maybe you've got a kids' fun run as well, that you need to keep pressing the add new button and add them all individually. So there'll be lots of intuitive features like that. They only appear at the time that's right for you. And we've been testing that a lot, myself and Ben and the team, been testing that a lot and making sure it does. We've put in what we think are the most useful tips and prompts and everything that you need immediately. Obviously, as the system continues over the next period of time, it might be well, everyone knows where to go to license a new event, so we'll be able to switch that off. Um, and it can also become intelligent, knowing where you are on the system, and it will learn from that as well. Good old AI. It will learn, and so if you already know how to do it and you don't need that, it won't show it to you. So I think that's a will be a really significant step forward. And I think when you get your hands on this particular part of the section, it will you'll find it in terms of that help instantly will be so much easier for you. We're always here to respond to your support queries, but obviously if you're doing it at a weekend or 8 o'clock at night, we're probably not going to get back to you till the next day or on the Monday if it's at the weekend. But with these tips, hopefully the number of times that you need to check that type of stuff will be significantly reduced. And you can see some of you may already have spotted the orange bars that appear at the top of the screen, which we'd already got live, which tell you how you're acting. So which profile are you in? Are you in as yourself or your organization? And we know that people sometimes weren't realizing that at the start. So again, we put that colored stripe in at the top so you knew what you are. And remember, if you're licensing an event, if you're submitting an event license, that always comes from the organization. So one of the things that Ben and myself have dealt with a few times over the last couple of months as people have been getting all their licenses in for this year is people do some work to a license, then they go away and check some more information, and then they come back and they carry on from where they've left off and they forget to switch to the organization. And then, of course, when you press submit, if you're Fred Jones can't submit a license because it comes from the organization. So make sure you're doing that, and that orange stripe at the top will remind you. On the subject of bits that you need to make sure that you've done, again, we've had a number of queries around the post-event forms, but also the forms that you need to do during the application process when you're doing your licensing. This screenshot here shows you post-event what you need to do, and we get this asked quite a bit, well, which ones I've got to do. And you'll see on the left-hand side there, those large red dots. And on this screenshot, which is from a desktop computer, you can see your race director forms, your declaration of numbers, and your results upload. As you do each one of those, the red dots disappear. In the same way, when you're doing your license application, you're putting it in the first place. Event licensing form info, race dates, races, courses will have the red dots next to them. And we get people say, I filled in all my red dots, but they're referring to the asterisks, which are the fields in the event info and event details, and not looking on the left and seeing the big red dots that are races and courses and adjudicator selection. So keep an eye on that. Those of you who are not so familiar with it, if you're on a tablet, it does appear slightly differently, or a mobile phone. Um, so you can see on the left side of this slide that I've just put up, the event info button that we saw on the left in the last screenshot. So if I just go back, you see it's on the left-hand side on the desktop. In this view of it, it's above event details. You can just see it there with event info and a little triangle. When you press the little triangle, exactly the same menu appears that was on the left, but it's in the center of your screen. Still need to do those red dots. So just so you've got that there. Right. That's the boring bit done with the system updates, which should help you a lot. What we did, we've got a few subjects here which we wanted to talk to you guys about, and we do need some input from you here. One thing to just mention with this, we said we've got some questions to go through with you, which we'll do some now. There'll also be a survey that will be coming out to you on this first discussion topic around the £2 affiliated race discount for athletes and runners. So, as you know, at the last Race Directors webinar, we discussed the types of discounts that could be applicable. And we said, is £2 the right level? Is a higher discount the right level? Is a percentage discount the right level? What would be useful to know from you guys, and we can do a bit of sharing here as well, is we know that the cost of races is going up. It would be interesting to know from you guys on the call tonight, how many of you have increased your event entry fees for this year because of the cost of races? Does anyone want to share anything from that?
Right, I've increased mine by £1.
You have, Pat, yeah?
Yeah, yeah.
And just remind us what area you're in.
Great Yarmouth,
Great Yarmouth.
Norfolk.
And is that £1 on all distances?
Yeah, we do a 10K and a 10 miler.
Yeah, lovely. Okay.
Oh,
Um,
sorry,
okay.
Sawtry 10 mile. We are keeping our prices the same as an early bird. And then once the early bird places have gone, we're putting them up by £2.
Okay. Interesting. And that's for 10 miles, Joe.
10 miles, yeah.
Okay, lovely. Gareth Jones in the chat there. They've increased by
That's for a 10K.
that's 10K.
That's 10K, yeah. And we've tried looking at keeping our overheads down, but unfortunately, we've got 4 landowners whose land we are using or going through, and every one of them has increased their costs.
Yeah. It's the reality, isn't it? Dean from Essex there. I'm not sure whether it's Lay or Lee 10K. You're trying to keep them the same by reducing overheads. Hopefully you'll be successful in that. Brass Monkey, Richard Yeoman's brilliant race that, Richard. So many people go to that £1 increase. Another keeping the same there, Adrian, South Shields 10K. They're managing to keep the same there as well. Great. Keep those comments coming in. One of the obviously the backdrop to it is looking at these race discounts. And we can see there's sort of, I guess there's some of you keeping it the same, but reducing your overheads. There's some going £1, some going £2. we've not particularly seen bigger movements from that, from what we can detect. So if we were to increase the level of race discount, how many of you would see that as an extra cost and therefore you needing to put your entry fees up? Or would you see it more as getting more club runners, bearing in mind that 69% figure at the beginning of the call? Would it get you more club runners? Happy to sort of open up on that. Anyone brave enough to?
I think
Yeah,
we're quite lucky in that we know that we will break even on the affiliated costs. So
Yeah.
anything that we go with non-affiliated, that just goes in the bag then for next year, so that we've got a buffer.
So, Joe, how would you feel if the affiliated runners therefore were getting, say, £3, or we talked about a percentage off instead?
I always think the smaller amount you can make it, the more attractive it is. We try and keep our prices as low as we possibly can, and we rely heavily on local sponsorship from businesses,
Yeah.
just because people haven't got the spare money to be paying out for races.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's an
It's the
interesting
first
point,
that's
that.
going to go, isn't it?
Yeah. So you'd rather try and keep that entry fee lower with the current discount? Would that be a fair
Yeah,
summary?
yeah.
Yeah. No. Good.
I
Anyone else want to come in on
think
that?
we're saying with that, we're trying to keep our prices low, and I think if we increase the discount for affiliated athletes, we'd probably have to increase for the non-affiliated.
Yes. Do you think that would put people off, Gareth?
Um, well, we've looked at what we're charging this year, and we think we're probably at our limit.
Okay.
What we could
Interesting.
increase the price to. We have a lot of local runners. We're only a small event. We're only 325
Yeah.
and
Okay.
maximum because we use a canal towpath. Um, so we can't increase numbers. So we've
Yeah.
either got to increase price or reduce outgoings.
Yes. Yeah. No, I understand that. Yeah. Um, Richard Furness there on the chat is saying their event sells out. Brilliant. There's lots of events selling out now, so that's great to see. And the high numbers of non-affiliated really helps the income. Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Brian just saying current discount is sufficient, works for us and the runners. There's that happy balance, isn't there, between the two? Um, Dean's got here current discount works at 70% unaffiliated, might discourage our fun runners having a bigger difference. It's a very good point. You might find that 70% becomes 65%, and then that could adversely affect your income. Um, Richard, who's Brass Monkeys, if you remember, they based the costings on the affiliated, so therefore unaffiliated is a bonus £2, um, which is a good way of looking at it. Um, Paul Wood makes a good point there that obviously we know what's going on in the big wide world beyond road running with the fuel increases that we're seeing and what's going to happen over the next 3, 4, 5, 6, 12 months with fuel prices. We're already seeing the petrol stations going up in price. I think I saw diesel had gone up by about 10p, which is it's a fair proportional increase, isn't it? Okay, that's really useful on a straw, sort of a little bit of a straw polling there. As some of you know, Scotland, who don't have a discount, they have the old levy system that we used to have about 15 years ago. Um, they've increased their levy from the 1st of April from £2 to £3. And those of you who weren't around 15 years ago, the levy is paid on the unaffiliated runners. So it's similar, but not the same as what we do. Um, so every unaffiliated runner currently in Scotland the race director pays £2 to Scottish Athletics. That will go up to £3 from the 1st of April. We're doing nothing on the 1st of April. It still stays the same. But obviously, it's prompted us to have a look at it. Wales were deciding what to do. I believe, well, last time I spoke to them, they were going to recommend £3, but still only collect a £2 levy difference between the levy and the post-race fees for event promoters, it's about double the cost. If you got a half marathon, say with 600 runners, based on the average split of affiliated versus unaffiliated, your license fee as an event promoter is half the cost in England, say, versus Wales. So it does change it a bit, but obviously you go into the license knowing club fee, obviously, is £50 flat. So that makes no difference. So we're just sort of trying to look at the impact in Scotland and Wales to see what happens from the 1st of April as well. But as I say, there will be a bit of a questionnaire coming out to you. So if you can complete that for us, it's really useful for us to have some data about that so that we can hear. And obviously, there's lots more race directors across the country who aren't on the call. They'll also get it. So hopefully, we'll get a good number of responses to that. Okay, we won't dwell on that too much now because we've got two or three other items we want to do ahead of a Q&A session. Just a reminder, those of you who haven't picked up on it, I know we've communicated it previously, that measurement certificates, for those of you with measured road races, you do not need to renew that for each date that the event takes place now. So you don't need to go to the course measurer's website, tap in your little code number and put the next race date in. Provided your course has been measured is the important word there, within the last 10 years, there's no need to renew it. Those of you who've already renewed them and have got this year's race date on, that's fine. That's not a problem, but you won't need to renew it next year. Those of you who've got last year's race date on, that's fine. And we've briefed the event adjudicators to say as long as the measurement date is within the last 10 years, that certificate is valid. Those of you who have new measurements coming up, you'll get a new style certificate. It looks quite different to the current one from the Association of UK Course Measurers. And it will actually have an expiry date on those certificates, which will obviously be 10 years from the date that it's measured. But it will have that expiry date on there just to make it double easy. We decided there was no point in getting the course measurers to go through the admin exercise of reissuing all of the certificates when your current certificate is perfectly sufficient. So just a reminder there, those of you who haven't seen the course measurers website, they have got a new website. It does make finding your measurers in your area a lot easier, and we're continuing to work with them in much more detail now about trying to get more measurers trained and available for all of you guys across the country to get those measurements. We know that there is a problem, and the problem is quite acute in some of the areas. And even today, I was having a conversation with the chair of the association about what we're going to do about that. So, work in progress. I wanted to touch on as well medical review, and there's a couple of strands to this. So, as many of you know, we're currently undertaking a medical review, looking at the guidance that we issue and the levels of cover that we recommend for different sizes of races and different distances of races. We've had the first meeting, and that's made up of, there's some race directors on the call, on that group, sorry, that are from different sized races. We've got some NHS professionals, both from a clinical and ambulance trust side of things. We've also got some health and safety people. We always need health and safety people. And we've got representatives from our insurers as well, so that we can make sure we've got that good cross-section, plus obviously some of us from the licensing side of things and the governance side of things. And as you know, I'm still a race director as well, so I can kind of look at it in two different ways. So we're looking at that. The good news is that our plan is to simplify the guidance and make it much easier for you to understand, and to within the whole setup, that matrix table that can take a bit of getting your head around will be made much easier. And our kind of key message from it is, what is the environment that you find your race in? And that's where we've been struggling, I think, over the last few years, particularly with the growth of multi-terrain, to get the current matrix and guidelines to kind of fit where the sport's at now. Because that environment is massively important. If you've got a half marathon that is a multi-lap event, your medical cover might look quite different to a single 13.1 mile lap, because your runners are never that far away on a multi-lap. So we're looking at how we express that environment much better. Equally, if you've got a 10K on the road with, I don't know, 1,000 runners, 2,000 runners, whatever it is, and your response vehicles can get to every point of that course on that road surface, that makes it much easier than a multi-terrain course where you've got access gates, you might have small, narrow pathways. The quickest way may be to drive not on the course and drive round. So where does that response vehicle need to go to get the fastest response, which is ultimately what it's about, the fastest response to the person who is in need of help. So we're looking very much at that environment. There will be some case studies that will bring to life some of those environments as well. You'll still have clear guidance, of course. There'll be less words in it as well, which will hopefully make it much easier for you. So alongside that, we've got the added complication, which some of you may be aware of. There's a CQC consultation going on at the moment, which is part of the Event Healthcare Standard review that's going on. And I was in Westminster 2 weeks ago talking to parliamentarians about this, including some of the select committee members as well as general MPs. And this was born out of the Manchester Arena inquiries, which we know Martin's Law obviously came out of as well. But Volume 2 report is basically, you can see the words on the screen there, that the Department of Health and Care should establish a standard for the level of healthcare services required at events. What we're trying to do is then not put too much emphasis on CQC where it's not appropriate. And our message through the process, and government and political circles obviously move in certain different ways and can take a bit of getting through, and giving them the understanding of what happens in our grassroots sports every day of the week. And it's not just us, it's other sports as well. Is the current thinking is CQC would need to be everywhere, until we started putting our hands in the air and kind of saying, hang on just a second here. What is CQC and why do we need it? Is it needed at all events? If you've got 300 people doing a 10K, do you need a CQC registered medical provider? Probably not. There are circumstances where it is absolutely needed. And predominantly CQC at the moment is based around the ambulance provision that you have at your events. If your local NHS trust require you to be able to transport direct to hospital, that has to be in an ambulance provided by a CQC registered professional company. You can have an ambulance that's not CQC registered, or the firm operating it are not. They just can't do a transfer to hospital. So it's that balance of risk. And yes, absolutely, CQC should ensure high standards of care, but there are other metrics and other measures and other qualifications and other quality assurance that could be used. So we're trying to tread that balance at the moment, but just so you guys are clear, we are there 100% fighting your corner, because we also know there are not enough CQC registered companies, providers, in the country to cover all of the running events, let alone football, hockey, rugby, tennis, and everything else on top of that. So there's got to be some sense, perhaps some exclusions in their current thought process. And we also know that CQC registered providers, because of the cost of holding it, are often more expensive as well. And whilst we're not advocating go for cheap healthcare and cheap medical services, it has to be the quality and the right level. Again, it's proportion. So we're very much fighting your corner there. We are part of a consultation process. We are on the working groups for it. So we are working hard on that. And whether our medical review will be finalised before this, we're not 100% sure. But it's all going on at the same time. One other thing to mention, as we've mentioned, Manchester Arena inquiry, and again, we've had a few questions on this, is Martin's Law, which has been given a new fancy name as well. That's still ongoing. It has passed into law. However, there are 2 years to implement the if you like, the contents of the law is probably the best way to describe it. When the law was passed, the detail of how that would actually happen at events like the ones that we all organise across the country on this call, that hadn't been formed. So the headlines and the content of the legislation had been written, but how that impacted events at a local level was not known. How that gets translated and whether there's exemptions, that hadn't been included. So we've got another year, basically, before we need to be implementing the contents of Martin's Law. We have got some professionals working with the Home Office on, again, some working groups to define and to create what that means. So my key message with Martin's Law today for you is you don't need to do anything at this point in time. You can carry on doing your well-organised events that I know you all have across the country, 100%, no problem. Once we've concluded this process with the Home Office around Martin's Law, we will be able to issue you with some guidelines and detail that tell you what it means for each of your events across the country and what you need to do. So that will come through, and we will do our absolute best to give you as much notice as possible with that, because we realise if it's coming in April 2027, it's no good us giving it to you on March the 28th, 2027, because you can't implement it in time. So we're obviously not completely in control of the timetable in terms of that process, but we are making it very clear that there needs to be enough lead time for organisers to, if they need to do something, they can do it. And it may be that there's smaller, lower profile events in terms of this law that are exempted from it, in which case you'll be able to carry on as you are now. But again, we are up there fighting the corner for all of the events and making sure that we do our best for you on that. So that covers those sections. We've got just under 15 minutes left on the call. So one of my favourite bits of the call is to open up the floor for your questions and answers. And it can be on stuff we've already discussed or whatever you want. Maybe there's a burning question. So we'll open that up to you guys. If you can, raise your hands so that we don't have you all shouting at once. That'd be brilliant. So over to you guys. Have I stunned you into silence? Nigel Taylor.
It's just I'm not on the next meeting on Wednesday, but it forms part of both. So we're on medical stuff. So the race director's supposed to supply the information to the medical providers before the race. So if we don't, what's the sanctions? And I've got two different hats on with that,
Yeah.
because obviously I obviously report back from an adjudicator point of view saying they haven't done it, but then on a race directors, what's if I don't do it, what's my sanction?
Yeah, it's a very good question, and um, we try not to be silly about these things. We do, obviously, as you rightly say, require race directors to provide a list of medical conditions to the medical company. Um, we do. What you don't have to do is provide a whole list of names of everyone before the event, and all of like Fred Blogs has this allergy, that allergy. You can, before the event, if you're worried about the data sharing, have that conversation, whether that's via email messaging or whatever, with your medical provider and say, look, I've got 10 runners that have got asthma. I've got 15 with this allergy, whatever it might be, and go through so that, because one of the reasons, there's two reasons for it, but one of the reasons that we've done this is so that the medical company, when they're coming to your event, um, know what it is they need to bring. And I know we've talked about before, like with diabetes, if you've got a race with an abnormally high concentration of diabetics, they might need to bring extra insulin supplies. You know, exactly who that's for, it doesn't really matter. It's just they need to know that. So that can be shared before, it deals with some of the data sharing issues I know some of you were concerned about. On the day of the event, it's up to you how you share that information. And we've got some people who share it electronically through a database where you can type in a bib number and up comes the medical information. I use an app for it. But other people have other methods. Some people prefer the good old-fashioned paper printing out, and you give it to the medical provider on the day, and they give it back to you at the end. So there's different ways of approaching it. In answer to what's your sanction, it does form part of the license standards. So we have the right to flag you for it. If we flag you for it, or your adjudicator flags you for it, we would want to know how you're going to deal with that failure, if you like, to meet the license standards next time round. Does that mean that you won't get a license next time? Only if you're not willing to meet license standards. So ultimately, yeah, okay, if you completely blankly refuse to do it and you're just not going to do it, then you've not met the license standards. But we prefer to work proactively with you to understand what the problem is in sharing it, why you didn't do it, and how that can be solved.
Yeah, cool. That's fine for me. Thank you, Barry.
Brilliant. Thanks, Nigel. Paul Wood, you're on mute, Paul. Oh, it's disappeared off my screen entirely.
It's partly to follow on from Nigel's question.
Yeah.
I see the role as educating the medical providers as well as the race directors. So if they haven't done it, it's explaining the reasons why it's there, and just saying the main point is that they should share this ideally before the event, so the medical provider has a chance and the opportunity to get the correct amount of medical supplies in place. That's
Yeah.
what the thinking was behind it.
Yeah. And as we said in the answer there to Nigel, is you don't need to give the list of names at that point. It's
No.
It's a flavour for what the medical provider is going to be seeing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, thanks, Paul. Brian, right, you're next. Oh, can't hear you, Brian. Oh, still can't hear you, I'm afraid. Are you able to put it in the chat for us and we'll be able to answer it for you? Lovely, thank you. All right, Brian's going to pop that one in the chat, so we'll have a look at that in just a second. Anyone else got questions whilst Brian's just popping this one in the chat? No, can't see any other hands there. We just were no no pressure on Brian whilst he types it in there. We'll hopefully see that in just a second or
Just,
two. Oh, is there someone else coming in there?
oh, do you want to answer Brian first?
Yeah, he's just got it in there, hasn't he? Yeah. Brian, good question there. He's going back to the slide on the statistics. Do you have any figures on RunEA members? So those of you who know about RunEA, that's the individual members for members who are not in a club. I don't have any with me tonight, but we can certainly get some of those for you for the perhaps the next one, or maybe we might be able to share it on the post webinar email. So unfortunately, no, not right now. Pat.
Yeah, does anybody keep stats on non-arrivals or whatever you want to call it, dropouts? Because in Norfolk, we seem to have our amount of dropouts have gone from 20 to about 10% this year, generally on the races that we've had in Norfolk.
Yeah, we don't have a specific methodology on recording the number of no-shows. We do know, talking to race directors, that it's averaging about 15% at the moment. So you're kind of going from one side to the other there, Pat. You were at 20%, you're going to 10%. I don't know of anyone of any organisation that's recording anything formally on that. If anyone else does know, feel free to share. I know there's various reports that look at all sorts of trends, but maybe that's something we could survey all of you guys on at a future point as well. Richard's saying 12 to 15% from his Brass Monkeys race there, so I tend to say 10 to 15% generally. Brian was saying, yeah, dropouts about 10%, mainly because his is lowered because the ability to transfer race numbers, presumably on his system there. Gareth is 10 to 15% run the River 10K there. John's got an interesting question he's put in the chat there, where if we have an accident, for example, a broken leg, should we look to increase the provision at future events? Probably wouldn't have this sounds terrible, a knee-jerk reaction to it. I know that's a pun with the broken leg, isn't it? But in other words, don't react too soon on it, because anyone could trip on something at some point and break a leg. So you probably need to look at your trends bigger than that single incident. Look over, a number of years of that event and look back. Okay, there can be a freak accident where someone breaks a limb or has something happen to them. But if your trend has been fairly static the whole time, fairly similar, probably wouldn't change anything.
Yeah, no, that's okay. It was actually me.
Oh, okay, fair enough. Yeah.
As a previous race director.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, hopefully you recovered, John.
I am recovering.
Yeah. I mean, if there was a fundamental issue with the event, you'd see it obviously more often. It's more likely probably to be a safety risk than
Well, I went out with first aiders to see someone that had fallen, and I turned around going down the hill and broke my leg. But I suppose it's a point of how many marshals should you have between each point. So runners, should they always see the next marshal?
Yeah, and I mean we say that's not necessary, but you need to be happy within your safety risk assessment, depending on your course, whether that needs to be adapted. If you're in a built-up environment, you might need more there, line of sight possibly, but we don't mandate anything like that because we don't know your course like you know it.
Okay, thank you.
A couple more bits on the dropouts there. 10 to 15% seems to be generally their lead 10K is 15%, and they're a nighttime November event. Paul Woods made the point there, lots of runners entering in the last 2 weeks. Will we ever get away from that again? Does make planning rather difficult. Roland said, does the increase in general costs mean that more club runners are not affiliating but claiming the £2 discount anyway? It's an interesting point, that, Roland. It could be. Those of you who don't know, we do have an API available that your booking and registration system providers can use to check the membership status in real time, so that nobody gets the £2 discount that is not a current affiliated member. So not to say that every system uses it. I don't know. It could be a factor there. Claire Hebditch, you've got a question. You're on mute just at the moment, Claire.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, got you.
Sorry. Just on the no-shows, we had a license of 500. We did transfers up to the day, and we had 100 no-shows on the day. But we could have advertised for, I mean, we had people wanting places. And how, I guess that's the thing, that's the difficulty, isn't it? Because of our location, people don't just show up on the off chance that they might get an on the day place, which we release at 10:30 or whatever, half an hour before the race starts, when we know what numbers we've got. Any suggestions on things like that?
Yeah, it's tricky, isn't it? Because as you say, you can be full and then you get your no-shows. I mean, you could make the decision to slightly oversell if you wish to. I mean, airlines do it, don't they?
Yeah. If we get over that number, though, what are the sanctions? I mean, we've never done it, but I suppose that's the thing, is what's the in terms of medical provision, that kind of thing. Because 500, for us, it's more the parking. We can't go over that because we don't have the parking available. So that's the struggle.
Yeah, I mean that is a very valid point in terms of what does it mean. If you tell us you're going to have maximum of 500, that's what your license is going to be granted on, as the same would be with your local authority, of course, as well. And we will assume that everything that you've got going into that plan is based on those numbers. If you suddenly had 600 runners because you picked up another 100 on the day, or a combination of very late entries plus on the day, we would be saying, well, we wouldn't be happy. Potentially your license would be invalid because you've said you're going to have 500 and we've passed it on that basis. So if you're thinking of overselling, because you're going to have 15% don't show up, you need to be sure that you're still below that license limit.
Okay. So probably putting in a slightly higher license number to get to the 500, to get back to the 500 in that sense.
Potentially, yeah. And obviously we'll say, okay, if you're doing an extra 100 people or 200 or whatever the number is, we'll say, okay, so have you changed anything in your management plan to adapt to it? Have you got any increase in your medical cover? I mean, probably 500 to 600, depending on your race, probably wouldn't need any more medical provision. But we'd just ask you a few questions about it to up it, but we do it all the time. So there's no problem in doing it.
Cool. Thank you.
We have got a question on the chat here as well. I have a question regarding the runners. Do we need to have a separate box on the entry system for this, as well as the normal affiliated and unaffiliated runners? No, because the API now recognizes the membership numbers for the RunEA runners. RunEA runners are entitled to the affiliated £2 discount that is at races. So if you're using the API checker, it will already know that you're one of those members and give you the £2 off as a runner. Obviously, that data then is available to you. So hopefully that answers that one. We can tell from the statistics, obviously, how many membership numbers for Run EA members from the API checker, provided people are using it, how many of the affiliated people were Run EA members versus our brilliant clubs across the country. Any other questions before we wrap up for today? No? Okay, well, hopefully that's been useful for you. As we always say, I'll just change the slide on here. We are available for any other questions you have. If you finish the call now and you haven't managed to ask it, there's our email addresses, or use runevents@englandathletics.org. But do keep in touch with us. Let us know. We're always trying to help you as much as we can. But for now, enjoy the rest of your evening, and we'll catch up with you all very, very soon. Thanks very much.